Tips and a winning strategy that'll get you to the final circle and that chicken dinner. It's coming up. Tip number 1, make them play your hand. And now my opponent doesn't know where I am and I get the jump. Now this wasn't pretty, but it got the job done. Tip number 2, always be first. When it comes to winning in Battlegrounds, being first gives you a huge strategic advantage over other players. Now, statistically, you'll be able to get more and better gear, and in the process, you'll deny other players of meds, boosts, helmets, vests, and of course, guns. Now, this in turn compounds your advantage. But it gets even better because you're getting looted up. The sense of pressure of the first few minutes of the game dissipates. You'll catch your breath, think more clearly, and ultimately you'll be prepared. Situational awareness is in your favor, and if another player enters in your play zone, well, they're not prepared. They don't have situational awareness, and they're more likely to fall prey to you. 3 primary factors will determine if you get there first and how many opponents you'll face. Number 1 is the distance between from where you bail from the plane and where you're going to loot. The harder it is to get to a specific location, in other words, the farther away from the flight, the less likely players are going to head there as well. Second, the overall flight path. As an example, let's say the plane is flying from west to east across most of the northern section of the island. In this example, we know fewer players are going to be in the south sections of the map. Example, the military base. And third, the probability of finding rare items. Now, this includes things like level 3 gear, helmets, vests, as well as rare guns. That could be Kar 98, SKS, VSS, etc. Now, you can go the extra mile. Just don't jump out anywhere. Rather, seek out a location and strategically parachute and/or leverage the power of a vehicle to distance yourself between you and other enemies in order to access high loot areas like the military base. Now, I almost always do this, and I'm running to catch the circle. However, I'm looted up with painkillers, energy drinks, and meds, and that allows me to easily survive. Tip number 3, be willing to spend more time looting. It's really about risk versus reward. And the fact of the matter is that if you make it to the top 20, you'll be at a huge disadvantage to players who have geared up, they have more meds, boosts, better guns, etc. Sights. Having only a holographic or red dot scope means you're far more likely to miss shots at a further distance. Potential targets past 150 meters become far more difficult to hit. Boosting power. Having no boost, now this includes painkillers and energy drinks, means you're far more likely to take damage and possibly die to the circle. The late game circles are absolutely brutal and deal a tremendous amount of damage. For example, my first win as Pixel Runner was not due to me killing an opponent, but rather me surviving, living a split second longer than my opponent. Now, we were both caught outside the circle, we were both crawling and prone, and I literally survived about 1/10 of a second longer, and I won. Vests and helmets. It's really very simple. Helmets and vests soak up damage. For example, having a level 3 vest reduces damage taken by 55%. Now, statistically speaking, having better gear means you can take more damage from enemies, allowing you to get off maybe one more shot and win in an engagement. Now let's talk about guns. The loadout and the guns that you focus on, of course, depends on your playstyle. However, most players will focus on a weapon that performs well in close quarters and maybe mid-range, and they'll focus on another weapon that is designed at range. In other words, Kar 98, SKS, maybe a VSS, something that does damage at a further distance of 100 meters. Now, in the early game, you focus on any gun you can get. But as soon as I've done that, my attention turns to either a UMP or a Vector. And why is very simple. Both of these weapons can be silenced, and most shotguns can't. And furthermore, most shotguns are absolutely worthless in a final circle. Now, each one of these elements alone can slightly increase the likelihood that you'll make it into the top 10. However, when you're fully loaded, you've got level 3 helmets, vest, you've got meds, boosts, you've got a UMP and SKS, maybe you've got a silenced weapon, you really start stacking the odds in your favor. And thus, I'm willing to spend more time outside the circle in the early part of the game. And I do this in order to loot all the great stuff. And this is especially true if I'm at the military base or maybe the warehouses up in the northwestern section of the map. Tip number 4, always have an escape plan. Now, if you're dropping or driving into an area like military and you're far away from the circle, you've got to find a vehicle, and thus your escape plan begins as you're either driving or dropping in. You want to pay attention. Are there any boats around if you're near the coast? Are there any vehicles, a motorcycle? Now, if you do boat into a location or you drive or bike, then pay attention to where you leave that vehicle, because you might be using it again to get the heck out of Dodge. Now, as you're looting, make sure to pick up a gas can to refuel your vehicle. This will allow you to boost your vehicle, which will increase the speed, but the cost is that you burn fuel incredibly quickly. However, that's not a problem because you planned ahead, you've got the gas can, and it's a non-issue. Now, this is where things start getting exciting. You've got all the great gear, the guns, and at the same time, you're outside the circle, you're taking damage, and what you want to do is as soon as you're safe from the circle, in other words, the circle isn't going to keep moving, or there's enough distance between you and the circle, you want to stop and heal up. You don't want to head into the center of the circle with a lot of damage. All it takes is a few bullets, one to the head, and you're toast. Now, as soon as you're safe, pull over and do it in an area that provides cover. Get out of the vehicle, go prone, and heal up. Now, once that's done, it's time to get back into the vehicle, and it's straight to the circle. Always be first in Player Unknown's Battlegrounds. This time, you want to be first to the center or very near the center of the circle. And it's all about being strategic. And the way you do that is you stack the odds in your favor. And being in the center of the circle often means you'll have to cover less distance than other players. And this really compounds as you play more and more games. Because, again, you're putting the odds in your favor. Sure, sometimes you're going to have a bad circle. You're going to have to run halfway across the map. It sucks. As you play more and more games, it really levels out, and this strategy begins to work in your favor because you're just going to travel less distance. It's about being stealth, making good decisions, and making other players play your hand. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that yellow icon now. You'll do just that, and I'll be updating you on everything Player Unknown's Battlegrounds, as well as other first-person and I guess now third-person shooters. Who would have ever thought? I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.